Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Alumni Founders Series. I am super excited that we are joined by Mr. Howard. Today, my name is Savannah Orsak, and I'm the Outreach Fellow here at the Entrepreneurship Center. And again, I'm very excited to be joined by you today, Mr. Howard. But before we get started with our introduction and our conversation with Mr. Howard, I have a poll for everyone just so that we can get a better idea of who is in the room. So you should be seeing that on your screen right now, and I'll give you about 30 seconds to answer that, and we can get to know each other a little bit better. Okay, I'm going to share the results on that. So we have quite a good mix of undergraduate students in here, as well as some MBAs, some professors, and a lot of others. So that'll be really interesting. Okay, and then for my final poll before we move into the conversation, this is just for the audience, so sorry, Mr. Howard, you can't answer this one, but whichever one wins, I will be asking Mr. Howard later tonight before we go into our Q&A. So take a moment to read those, and then we will get started. Okay, just a few more answers coming in. All right. I'm not going to share the results on that one. You'll have to wait and see. But great, so if this is your first time at Alumni Founders Series, next we're going to dive into a brief interview with Mr. Howard, and then I'm going to open up the conversation to all of you to ask him questions directly yourselves. So we're very lucky to be joined by Todd Howard today. Mr. Howard is the designer, director, and producer at Bethesda Game Studios. He studied business at William & Mary before he joined Bethesda, and Mr. Howard has directed and designed a massive portfolio of projects, including Fallout and the Elder Scrolls and many other games that a lot of you are probably fans of and have played before. He's also been honored as one of the world's top game creators, including the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences Hall of Fame and the Game Developers Conference Lifetime Achievement Award. So Mr. Howard, thank you so much for joining us. To start, how are you doing personally and professionally in this time that we've all found ourselves in for about a year now?
All things considered, it's been hard for everybody really across the world. I feel very, very lucky, in the business we're in, making games, and we've been able to work from home really, really well. And I think kind of the gaming and people getting together online and meeting each other has been is usually a rewarding kind of social outlet for all of us. And it's become more important to a lot of people. And we've been able to connect in new ways with the people who play our games. So that's really been very, very rewarding. But like everybody, I'm ready to get back to some of the things we enjoyed before, particularly obviously the social bonds with my coworkers. And overall, though, I think I'm much more interested in hearing what it's been like to be in college during all of this, because I imagine that's been quite hard on everybody here. And I understand William & Mary's handled it great with a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, it's definitely been quite the experience, not necessarily the experience we all signed up for. But you are welcome to also ask that to everyone during the Q&A. It is a two-way Q&A. So, but yes,
lots of questions. Great.
Yay. So thinking back to your time at William & Mary, how did your time here shape your game design and development career path?
Well, I think the good thing being at William & Mary, and I sort of went into more of I'll call it a technical field. There's a lot of technical fields out there. At the end of the day, what we do is an awesome combination of, I was always into tech and computers and also art. We were saying I did take a lot of art courses at William & Mary. I almost got a minor, but I didn't want to take the art history classes. I just wanted to make art. And I also obviously graduated with a business degree, and I was able to do a lot of things at William & Mary. I took piano, I took golf. It's just I think people visit Williamsburg and they kind of get a sense of the town. But the thing I always loved about William & Mary is it's a great college town. Mm-hmm. Like the college is the town right there. And the idea that how history and liberal arts affect our modern lives, and then how might these things affect us in the future, but what does that mean to us as humans more than just what can a piece of technology do? but really rewarding time. And particularly, love the campus, love the town, and love the people I met.
That's awesome. It's good to hear that you really enjoyed your time at William and Mary. To kind of follow up on that, how was your experience, or was your experience as a business student shaped by your passion for computer science or art and design, or vice versa?
Well, I think in those days too, computers, there weren't many people, you didn't really have a computer in your room. You went to the computer lab. Um, I think eventually my sophomore year, I bought a computer, which was a big deal. Um, and the business school was I think it was more accounting, finance focused. I did some marketing. I did a marketing internship at a software company, so I was very interested in software. But at the time, gaming wasn't really a big thing, that it is today. Um, but it was a passion of mine and something I knew I wanted to get into, but it wasn't a major. It wasn't something you could say, I'll put this together.
Mhm.
But the business school for me, that was a good look at how companies operate, um, that I found very, very interesting, that I felt would be good to have as a skill set.
Awesome. And from what I've read, if I'm correct, you were rejected from Bethesda several times before you were eventually recruited and began a wildly successful and ongoing career there. And at the EC, we would define this as grit, or persistence in the face of challenges. So, what might your advice be for students who are wishing to break into the gaming or computer science or software or even digital design fields, when it comes to continuing to be ambitious and persistent in a career field that's changing?
Well, I guess you could say I was somewhat rejected, but I went when I was still in college, right? I drove by the office. I grew up in Pennsylvania, and it was, the spring semester was starting. So I was driving back down to Williamsburg, and I remember it was Martin Luther King Day. And I decided, oh, this is where Bethesda Softworks is. I'm just going to drive to the office and say I want to work there. But I was still in college, so that was my first rejection. Can you work? No. um, and then they didn't have a job, but I was very, um, I think you mentioned the word grit. I don't know if I would, that's probably a good word, resilience.
Mhm.
Um, there are so many things in life, particularly if you want to be an entrepreneur here, or do those things, where you're going to see some doors that look like they're closed, and you might just have to knock a few times or try another one and see if there's a back door, or do those things. Um, and eventually things will break your way. So it probably, yeah, maybe it took me a good year and a half. No, it was about a year from that moment, year and a half, yeah, before I started there.
Okay. So now, as voted on by the audience, what is an innovation that you hope to see in your field in the next few years?
In my field, well, particularly in my field, um, the main thing is that I think if anyone here plays games, I'll do a show of hands if you play games. But probably a lot of you are on your phones a lot, right? You have devices that are all with you. And so one of our goals is to make sure, try to help push that you can play that wherever you want. Like right now, if you want to watch Netflix, you can probably, or watch a movie, you can probably do it on any screen. Picks up right where you were, right? Maybe you watch some on your phone, you go here, you're on your TV, you end up somewhere else. Um, and I'd like to see that for games, where it still takes a long time to download a game, get into a game, pick it up where you left off. And we kind of want it to be ubiquitous, where, hey, it doesn't matter who you are in the world, what kind of screen size you have, what kind of controller, whether you can use a controller, right? There are certain people that have disabilities. They can't hear or see or handle a controller the way you're used to. And so opening those opportunities up to everybody is it's a big technical challenge, and one for that we're working hard on, along with the people at Xbox and Microsoft. Um, the other tech thing, this is not in my field, and I don't deal with it, we talk about, are self-driving cars. So when I think about technology, there's VR, and then self-driving cars, I think, are going to redefine, particularly the car part, is going to redefine how people of all ages experience their day-to-day in the world over the next decade and 20 years. So I think that's going to be as world changing um, in the way the internet, in the way the internet was for a lot of people. The ability to to have self-driving cars, it will change cities, it will change so many things across the world.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear that what you're working on as well. That's
And
exciting.
sorry, actually, the self-driving car thing is weird. I should have done the leap. That that kind of started with, believe it or not, video game technology. If you know the company NVIDIA, it's a lot of AI, and all of these chips started with making video games and 3D worlds and analyzing images and things like that. And it's kind of an AI, right? So there's kind of this thing where that's a lot of that technology has shifted over in a much different and bigger way to those kind of AI processing, image processing, and such.
Very cool. An exciting future ahead, nonetheless, thanks to innovation and entrepreneurship. But for my last question, before we jump into the Q&A, so for those of you that have questions, make sure that you're ready so that we can get through as many as possible and still be mindful of Mr. Howard's time. But for the last question, I've put our pillars of entrepreneurial thinking into the chat for you if you want to take a look at them. But I always ask our alumni, based on your experience, which one of our pillars of entrepreneurial thinking do you think is the most beneficial when building a business or a design or scaling an idea? So I'll give you a second to read those.
You're asking me?
Yes.
Where are they?
I put them in the chat.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Of course. There's quite a few of them, so.
These are all very good. If I would have to say it, the one that people underestimate when they're in school is maybe the collaboration part is really, really, that to me becomes more important than just about anything. I think the grit one, the being able to go, you're going to have failures no matter who you are or what you do, particularly if you're an entrepreneur type who's pushing, right? You're trying new things. You're going to have setbacks, but your ability to work in a group, get the best out of the group you're in collectively really makes the difference. If you look at any great company, product, all those things, at the end of the day, they were done by a group of people that worked well together, that shared a vision. And there's a great thing that I like. Google did a study a long time ago of looking at all of the groups inside of Google and what made the ones that were really effective. What were the key things? Was it experience? Was it the structure of it? And the number one thing, I believe it was defined as kind of social safety. That group's ability to fail even amongst each other. And I think those of you who've worked on group projects, you probably are thinking to yourself, yeah, I really enjoyed being in this group because we clicked well and you felt safe in that to bring up ideas without somebody saying, oh, you're dumb or what's that? Or those are the groups that are the most successful. So it's up to the individuals to help facilitate that, as opposed to saying, I hope to get in a group like that. When you're out and doing these things, I believe it's up to all the individuals to be a person that is going to facilitate that type of group and carry those values forward. But this is a great list. All of them are really good.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing with us. I think we're in a really great place to start our Q&A. So if anyone has a question, you are welcome to raise your hand and then I can call on you to unmute yourself and ask Mr. Howard personally. Or if you would like to send it in a message to me privately, I would be happy to read it aloud for you. Okay, so let me pull up the participants list. Okay, the first one I have is Jacob. Would you like to ask your question?
Hello, Mr. Howard. Just want to say thank you for coming to speak to us. It's a really cool opportunity to be able to kind of a personal experience with you. And my question is, as you brought up earlier, that you were recently acquired by Microsoft. I was wondering, how has Bethesda's business operations and creative freedom kind of changed since that acquisition?
Well, it's very, very new. It's only been just over a month. So we're still set up as our own, subsidiary, but we are connecting with Microsoft. They do a lot of things that can make us better. But creatively, that they're really a creative organization when it comes to games, and we've worked with them for a long time there. So we're able to do, the things that I love to do, but also tap into all of those resources there, particularly on the Xbox side, to make our games even better.
Okay, great. So next is Taylor.
Hi, nice to get to have you here today. So I have a bit of a compound question for you, which is, if we have a game idea that we think is very fresh and like has a heavily profitable model, where do you recommend that we go to get the startup capital to build it? Like legitimately names of firms or people or organizations to seek funding or pitch to? And how do we protect the idea of our game as well?
Hmm. Well, I'm not as good at the fundraising part. I mean, the wherever you would go ask for money, go ask for money. Um, I think nowadays, if you want to create a game, there's so many. I think it's more important to look at the avenues for publishing it, right? Apple has some programs with Apple Arcade. I know there's a lot of indie kind of developer seed programs to look into, but usually I tell people just start making stuff. Because the avenues now to make something and then publish it either on one of the app stores or through Steam or Xbox, whatever, it's easier than ever. So if you have an idea that you want to start seeing how it looks on the screen, just start. Um, I think in all of those things, writing a big business plan and raising money to make a certain game, you're going to want to start making some stuff and see like really what makes this tick. Is this fun? um, you know Question your assumptions there as far as the game that you're creating.
Do you have any recommendations then for if we have a game idea that includes augmented reality, because that's a little bit more complex of a technology to incorporate as a
Apple is
start game?
probably the best starting point for the AR stuff right now because you can use your phone. They have some great SDKs for that. We've done a little bit of that. That would be my starting point.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next we have Nick.
Hi. So I wanted to ask about the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, and I've always found it really fascinating that that game has retained so much popularity and demand for so long now. And I wanted to ask, when you guys were designing the game, did you have that in mind? And if so, what did you do to give it that longevity?
First, I love your T-shirt. So good choice there. You can't design for Skyrim's. This sounds crazy. So this year's the 10th anniversary. So it's been popular for a decade. I don't think you can ever plan for something like that. It's kind of crazy, and it's still getting played. Still one of the top played games, which kind of blows my mind. We usually, though, and I always like big kind of sandboxes. So usually we're making a game, we realized over time as they became more popular that no matter what we do, people would play it for 1,000 hours. So once you're kind of designing for hundreds of hours, it almost becomes limitless how you think about some things. The other thing is we think the kind of user created content and mod things that we do have always been a part of our DNA, and giving that to the community where they can create stuff has always given our games a longevity that something else that doesn't do that wouldn't have. So I think it's those things, together. The game was designed to keep playing. The community's really kept it alive with what they've created. And I think the style of the game, obviously is, spoken to a lot of people. And it started becoming, there was a period where it became this, I would hear from people who never played games, which I did find surprising at the time, where their first game is Skyrim. I don't know if it's a great first game. It's probably not, but they were introduced to it by their, their cousin, their nephew, their friend would be over like, hey, sit down, I have to show you this. So it really spread from the people playing it.
Great. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Nick.
I was just saying, appreciate it. Thank you.
So before we get to our next person, I also just wanted to say you're welcome to introduce yourself as you ask your question to Mr. Howard as well, and say your name and your graduation year and your major. I apologize for not mentioning that before, but I know he would be very interested in hearing that. So next we have Ian.
Hi, Todd. I'm Ian. I'm a sophomore here, class of 2023. I'm a philosophy major, and I just wanted to say I'm a huge fan of the Fallout and Elder Scrolls series. First PC game I ever played was Skyrim. I just wanted to ask you more of a personal question. What is your favorite project you've worked on over your tenure at Bethesda, and what do you think makes an interesting or enjoyable project, both specifically in the game development space and in general?
Well, I don't really, it's going to sound bad to say, do I have a favorite or not? They all take so long, 4 years ish. So it's like each of them to me is like going through college. So, and there are a lot of great memories, I would say that, and, Fallout 3 has always been a really big one because it was so new for us. You're picking up, an IP, a world that already existed and had been was very, done in a different top-down game way. We had to sort of translate that to a modern area. So it was a very interesting challenge. I'd say right now my favorite project is Starfield because we're in the middle of that. So it's always like always the current or last one. Like, I think that's the best one. I find it hard to go back and play them because, you spend so much time of it. Once it's done, you kind of like, you don't want to see it for a while. But I still play Fallout 76 with my brother. So it's one of the ways I hang out with my brother. And I don't like see it I'm playing the game, but I don't see the game. I see I'm socializing with my brother. But I love them all. They're like your children, right? You love them all in different ways. And there are days that sometimes your child pisses you off and you like the other one. And there's other times where you love them all. Yeah.
Thank you.
Next we have Tan.
Hi, Mr. Howard. It's surreal not seeing you on the E3 stage, but in a Zoom call.
This is exactly the same. It's fine.
Yeah. I'm Tan, class of 2022. I'm a history major. I was gonna ask that, how does public perception or backlash affect game development? Like, for example, CD Projekt Red had their whole controversy about releasing Cyberpunk 2077, and now they have to sideline their future timeline because of hacks and that type of backlash that he received. So how does that factor into your job, basically?
Well, look, when you do entertainment that's subjective, you have to get ready for a lot of that. You work for years and then you put it out there and you're gonna read all the reviews. I can remember really, really glowing reviews. Like I can remember the words people used. I can remember really, really bad reviews and the words that they used and how the fans reacted. We hear from everybody, whether it's a critic online or a fan writes a letter or they post on the internet. And I think it's a great thing. I think that at the end of the day, we're really, really passionate about it. Like we're making the games that we would stay up all night to play, and we do them, particularly while we're making it. And all of those comments come from a point of passion from the audience, right? They want it to be great as well, and they're kind of along the ride with us. So it's like I said before, you're gonna have your ups and downs. You can't take the really high points. We've had a lot of success, win all these game of the years. You can't take that and blow it out of proportion, and you got to kind of stay level, whether it's good or bad, and say, hey, how do we do something amazing the next time? What do we want to play? What would our fans love to play? And they're gonna give us the feedback that's really, really honest. Often you might not like I don't always like the adjectives they use, but the intent behind what they're saying is always really, really pure, and comes from a great place.
Great. So next is Tyler.
Hello, I'm Tyler, business analytics major. I also work a little bit with esports here at the school. But the question I wanted to ask you is sort of about like business models. So in my experience, it seems like game studios are either being acquired by Microsoft or sort of like Epic Games where they have their own store. Do you think that there's less and less room for studios that aren't either housed underneath a larger corporation or company to sort of like pursue those passion projects? Like it's either an indie game or you have funding from Microsoft to put out a AAA title. Do you think we're like squeezing out the middle area in that regard?
The good news is I don't. It's a great question, by the way, really great question. I don't. I used to worry about that. There was a period of time, I don't know, call it 6 years ago, whatever. I don't know exactly, previous to the current cycle, where I think some of those things were happening. But if you look across kind of the ecosystems of games, from Steam to the app stores to Game Pass, and seeing all these games, there's every opportunity to get whatever game you want, to get it made and get it to people. So budget obviously plays into that, right? How much do I want to spend to create this experience? But those things are getting easier and easier with a lot of the great tools out there. So I am more optimistic than ever that if there's a creator out there that really wants to do something unique that before might not have found an audience, if you had to spend what you had to spend, get it in a box, get it to retail, right? We're in a digital world. So before it was, does Best Buy want to buy that game and put it on the shelf? Those barriers are gone now. So it's quite a great environment for gaming right now.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
These are really great questions. Next is Richard.
Hi, Mr. Howard. I'm Richard. I'm a Gov and Business Analytics double, and I also work with the esports team here at William & Mary. I just had a quick question regarding, I guess, consumer feedback. I know that the release of Fallout 4 was not well received by its fans, and I was wondering, how did you and your team respond to a less than stellar launch, and how did you bounce back from that?
Do you mean Fallout 76 or Fallout 4?
Fallout 76, pardon.
Okay. Fallout 4 is, that's pretty. Yeah, you know what? We were ready for some of that. When you do an online game, you know that there's going to be some issues, but it was we really let a lot of people down. That's what you have to realize. You're getting the feedback and you realize, hey, we let a lot of people down, and you have to do everything you can to make it right. Listen to that feedback and give the feedback back. Hey, we hear you. Here's what we're going to do about it. And that's easy to say at that point in time. Now that we're however how many years removed, 2.5+ years removed from that, where we've done the work, people are loving the game, it's really popular. It's obviously that's what matters. Do you actually get it done and see the response from the community? We've been really, really fortunate that despite the issues we had so many people who still love the game underneath of those issues and were willing to give us the benefit of the doubt and the time and work with us to get it there. But go back to the grit thing. You really have to put your head down and focus, like, all right, enough about that. We're going to fix this and make it right for everybody, for our fans, for ourselves, for the company, for, everything, for the brand, and get it in a really good place where we're proud of it and people who play it are proud of it as well.
Jin, you're up next.
Hello, Mr. Howard. I'm Jin, class 2021, double major in computer science and Japanese studies. I just want to start off saying, I grew up playing games like Fallout 3 and Morrowind, and I kind of just been playing those games ever since. But to get to my question, specifically about world building in games, when you're designing these worlds, especially really vivid worlds like in Morrowind, what are some questions or like things you consider while designing like these kind of narratives?
Yeah, when it comes to the worlds, that's where we like to start, right? Because at the end of the day, the game, despite all the systems and stories, it's ultimately about the world you're in. It colors everything you're doing. And we are ones that I like to say pique your curiosity, that they have a little bit of the familiar where you're a little bit comfortable, like I get this, but then you're wondering what's over the next hill or what's going to present to you, that you think about what you would do in that world and the game responds. So I think we say is happy, do the game where it always says yes as much as possible. So like, can I do this? Yes. Can I go here? Yes. And people play our games a lot. And I do this with other games that I really get into, or even ours during development, where you have a long play session and then you turn it off, then you go to bed and you're still thinking about it. And that's where like, okay, it's really become this, it's become a real place. And it sounds like people don't play a lot of games. It can get a little bit of a negative connotation, like this virtual world feels real to me. But I think it's a good thing that the emotions you experience in that, for what it is, are real. So that's kind of what I experienced growing up playing certain games that really touched me, where I had an emotional response. If I did something great in a game, I felt that like I did this. Like for those of you who play games, and Tyler had mentioned esports, when you do something in that, it's real. And you leave those sessions or those things and you feel like, you have the pride of like, I've accomplished something. And I think it's hard for people that aren't really into it to understand that kind of emotional motivation of accomplishment. It's real accomplishment.
Nikki.
Next is Weir. I apologize if I pronounced your name incorrectly. It's a little hard to hear you. Do you mind?
I can speak up. I just wanted to say thanks, Todd. You're a great giant in your industry. I've loved doing this Q&A with you. And my question is, a lot of modern games have focused on making everybody play the same content, and that's something that Morrowind, Skyrim, Fallout series, they didn't do that. They gave people a lot of options. You could play through all of Skyrim and only do a quarter of the content. I guess my two questions are, what do you think about this changing industry where they want everybody to play the same content so they can know what the user experience is going to be like? And how do you think about your future games? Are you going to transition into that style, or are you going to stay with the old open world, you can only play half the game and still beat it kind of idea?
Well, yeah, I mean, I can't speak for other people, though. I think if you look historically over, there's been a pretty good mix. I can't say that it's been drifting toward I call them like curated experiences. Open world stuff's it's probably become more popular as opposed to less. But even in some of those, in certain games, you're playing the designer's game. You can usually tell when you're playing, the designer of the game is dragging you along by this is exactly what you're going to do. You kind of lose that agency. We like to make big games. We have a lot of choice. If anything, they're going to get bigger, not smaller. But that was a debate we would have internally, and people would usually say to me or our team, why do you make it so big? Someone's only going to play, as you said, 25% of it. And I would always say, yeah, but the 75% they didn't do, they knew they could have. And the choices that flavored the 25 hours. So like the 25 hours you spent was completely flavored by all of these possibilities. So if I got rid of those, the 25 hours you did play would be completely different. So we need that kind of canvas of choices for the player, so that they can craft their own journey, even though obviously we have like quest lines and story parts that we want you to touch, how you get there, and the character you play can be different for as many people as possible.
Thanks. happy to
Good question.
see that.
Now, before we get on to our next question, I thought we would take a break for a second and ask Mr. Howard if there is a question that you have for everyone, because I know you had one before and people can raise their hands or something if you would like to do that right now.
I was mostly, how's everybody doing going to school during a pandemic? It's one thing being out in the working world and you can do X, Y, and Z, but I was just very, very curious how it's going for everybody and what you're hoping for coming up. But really, how has it been?
If everyone wants to either do like a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or you can answer in the chat, I think that would be effective.
Do you still go to the college deli? Are you allowed to? Like, what are the rules? Video games are helping me get by.
Yeah, and the college deli is open.
How does the cheese shop handle this? Really, that's the question.
The cheese shop has been so busy, so I don't think they're struggling at all.
All right, some good answers here.
Okay, so
Red ends are still $1. There's a business. Make a tangy mayonnaise and the world is yours, people.
All right, well, those answers are still coming in. You're welcome to keep reading those, and you guys are welcome to keep sending those, but the next question is Tom.
Hi, Mr. Howard. My name is Tom Cook. I'm a sophomore here. I'm majoring in computer science, and I'm also on esports. And you mentioned earlier that, I may have heard you wrong, that you just drove up to Bethesda Softworks and just asked for a job.
Correct, yes.
And they rejected you?
Well, I was in college. They were like, can you start? No.
So, okay. All right. So
I was still in school. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. My question is, how did you eventually get in? And then where did you start? And how did you get to where you are now? Because it seems like a pretty insane road, I guess, you took.
Well, actually, it was quite simple. I was like pre-asking. When I went by, I was saying, hey, when I graduate, I'd like a job here. So they said, let us know when you graduate. So then I graduate, I like a job. Like, we don't have one right now. We'll let you know. And then I was doing some computer stuff locally, and I did get to go out to, like, at the time, CES, which they still have. I think so. It's like the precursor to E3. Long story short is I kept in touch with Bethesda and would say, hey, when you have something, let me know. Here's what I'm doing. Are there things you want me to work on? And one day I got a note back, said, yeah, actually we have a position, and it was an associate producer position. That's kind of where I started as a producer. And I had always made games on my own. So at those days, the teams for a game, they were maybe 8, let's call it 6 to 10 people on a game. Maybe it got as high as 20 if it was a really, really big game. Today it can be 200 to 1,000 people on a game. So I was lucky enough to get started really when gaming was starting to really, really blossom. And I got with a really great independent company and, have been there for 27 years now. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Great. So next is Ben.
Hello. Hi, I'm Ben. I'm a social class 22. I'm a sociology and Japanese studies major, and I also work a bit with the game design club. First, I do want to say I am a fan. I think one of the first games I played on Xbox was a copy of Fallout 3 in that old GameStop. When they would take the box art and they would put in their own store copy. So I think that was one of the first games I ever played on a console. And I still think it informs a lot of decisions I make today. I wanted to ask because I remember a few years back seeing a face I really wasn't expecting to during a Nintendo Direct, which was yours, Mr. Howard, and that experience of working with Nintendo to put Skyrim on the Switch. Um, you have the Fallout and Elder Scrolls games have been translated into a lot of different languages and have been sold worldwide now. And I wanted to ask, how do you consider your games in the context of what they might mean for international consumers who might not have the same, Fallout itself is very much based on like the sort of commentary of like 50s American consumer culture, and Elder Scrolls is informed by a lot of Western fantasy uh, tropes and narratives, right? So I wanted to ask, how do you consider those to perhaps a audience that might not have those experiences, or just your thoughts on that, I guess?
Sure, good questions. As it comes to the international stuff, it's something I've learned over time. Maybe we weren't good at it in the beginning. We do have a team of people in Europe that we work with who, they're part of the company that translate the games into languages. And we've kind of learned, and it's not that we skew the game for one audience or the other, but we know if we do certain things, how that might be received somewhere, and they'll tell us. For a long time, Germany had very, very strict rules on violence, immolation. These are things you have to talk about, particularly when it comes to Fallout. Like, we're going to light some people on fire. And you have to really go into deep discussions about how the people get lit on fire. How much do they scream? Like, where are you immolating people with fireballs versus magical fire? These are the things we do at work. So you kind of learn those things. Or you mentioned Japan then in Fallout 3. So the quest in Fallout 3 where you use the nuke to blow up the city, like that's a no-go. So you kind of learn some of those things. And over time, you had mentioned Nintendo. One of the great things about my job that I've really loved is you get to see things first. And I will say, when Nintendo showed me the Switch in its early days, I was like, this is the greatest. Like, okay, what can we do? And usually we're a little more, I'm usually a little bit more cautious, right? To jump in right on something new like that. But I just thought it was the best of Nintendo, right? And I just think they have proven over decades to be the best game maker, if not the best game makers, up there with the best game makers. What they do, they really know what makes Nintendo. So it's a device I love. It was something I wanted to be involved in, and they've been awesome. They were awesome to work with.
Great. So next is Carrie.
Hi, Mr. Howard. I'm Carrie. I'm a junior and doing a physics and computer science double major. My question for you is, first of all, Skyrim was a hugely popular game to mod. And I guess I just wanted to ask, how do you feel about modding in general? And also, where do you see modding going in the future?
Great question. Something we're really passionate about in our studio. I mean, that's how I started making games too, right? I took other games and, I tried to break them apart and change. It's the best way to learn. There was an old Apple II game, Stuart Smith's Adventure Construction Set. And you can make your own role-playing games. And I just love that. So when we came to do, at the time, Morrowind, I wanted a construction set, came with the game, an editor. So it felt like, it's like Dungeons and Dragons. You can be the dungeon master, you can make your own adventures. That kind of started back then. So it's been 20 plus years that we've been doing it. We love it. We still have a ways to go to make it easier for people, right? We made a good step with Fallout 4 and then put it back into Skyrim, where on consoles, you can open up this menu of mods and just try them out. That was a big step for us, and it's gotten really popular. Crazy number. We've done well over 1 billion mod downloads. So it shows how many people want this and how many things they want to try. But again, we still have a ways to go to make that even easier for people to try things out, easier to create. And we have things that we're working on for our future games that hopefully will make it an even bigger part of how you experience them.
Thank you.
Next is Aaron.
All right, so I'm a senior computer science major, and I have a higher up role in the game design club. And I just wanted to know, so have you always wanted to have like a sort of like, producer role or like a higher up role, or did you just kind of fall into that? And do you ever wish that like you had a just like more low, just like normal role?
Well, you got to keep in mind when I started, everybody did a bit of everything. The teams were so small. So I think what made me unique was I could do a bit of everything because I was trying to make my own games. Like I took a lot of art. I could do the art. I could program, not great. And I did, like in our early games that I did, Terminator and the early Elder Scrolls, like I was also the sound guy. So I did the sound effects. I didn't really program on those games. So I think once you did all those, I did a lot of creative writing as well. It just kind of, I won't say I became the head of certain things. But I would say I was put in charge of a project much faster than I anticipated. But it wasn't that, I'm just saying, it wasn't that weird at the time because the teams were small. And probably the bigger jump was when we did Morrowind. And that's where it started getting bigger, where your day-to-day became managing people instead of creating. So I think the heart of your question, if I'm understanding you right, is, getting my fingers in the soup. And that kind of goes up and down. There are times I get to design systems, but I work with so many great people. I think it's great to surround yourself by people who can do whatever they're doing. They can do it way better than you can, so let them go. I think one of the things that I try to do is, facilitate that between groups, because I know a little bit about what everybody does, and can help, work with the team on finding the best, possible route to a problem, so that there's so many part store games, if you've played them, having it not seem like a big kind of schizophrenic mess of a game, to have it, have a certain flow. That's probably where I spend the most of my time, if I'm answering your question right.
Okay, and next is Pablo.
But I think it's great, by the way, that you have a game design club. Like I would have been all over that when I was in school. I had nothing like that.
Hi, Mr. Howard. My name is Pablo Solano. I am the technology fellow here at the Entrepreneurship Center. I'm a computer science major, and I am planning to have a career in game design and game development. I'll also be the first to say that I'm a big fan of your games. You can't see my trinkets very well with my background.
I caught a Dishonored edge there.
Yeah.
Great game.
Good game. But I had two questions that I guess you can choose your favorite out of. One of which is just, as someone who was in your position, like not too long ago, do you have any advice for me as a person trying to break into your industry? And secondly, do you have an opinion about the current state of games journalism today?
Okay, advice for, let me do the journalism one. I think it's fine. It's been people read who they want to read. I think there's some really great journalists out there that I know who do an awesome job, and there's some that I think don't. But people, I think it's good for anybody to find somebody whose opinion and voice they trust, and go talk to them, whether they are a journalist or a friend or whatever. Advice for you, I said before, make stuff. You should be able to make things on your own and kind of get it out there. If you think you want to create something, see if you can do that. If that's not the route for you and you want to join a company, you have to think about what size of company or team you want to get into. My advice there would be to start smaller. You'll get to do more. Whereas if you join a very, very large group, just be selective about, hey, what's my role? What am I going to get to do? Because some of these larger projects, that you run the risk of seeming like, just one out of a 1,000. And those are good experiences as well, but I don't know that they're a good starting experience, if that makes sense, in my opinion. And I only have my experience, right? So,
thank you.
Great. So sadly, we only have time for one more question. So I apologize to everyone whose questions we weren't able to get to tonight. But for our last question, Max, you are up to ask.
Hi, Mr. Howard. My name is Max Simon. I'm a freshman at William & Mary. And I was just curious how the shortage of next generation consoles has affected development decisions. And really, I'm just wondering if I'm going to be able to get a PS5 by the time Deathloop comes out.
Well, I wish I could give you an answer to that. It's not a unique problem when it comes to console cycles, and I think COVID has made it even harder for some of the manufacturers. They're making them as fast as they can. Does it affect development? The shortage doesn't. When they are coming out, does. So if you're going to start a project and you think you're going to be on the cusp of one, and we've been through that a few times, and we're on that now with Starfield. Same thing happened to us with Oblivion from into the Xbox 360, and then Fallout 4 into the Xbox One era. Those are and we're doing it now with Starfield into this. Those are the trickiest development things, because you know about the new hardware on paper. So you say, okay, we're going to target the new hardware. And then you get, a development kit that really isn't the full thing. It kind of is emulating it. So it's not till later in the process that you really know what you have, that you can really, really go. That makes it really tricky. The good news is, with the current state of the industry, though, whereas before you would reset, meaning you're making a game, everything is new. The people who make these consoles and hardware now are much, much better about, making the development process similar as you had it before. So it's not as big of a change in your actual development, but it's a major change in the power that you have access to. Good question, by the way.
Thanks.
And I hope you get a PS5 and an Xbox Series X. Both excellent.
Awesome. So sadly, we have come to the end of our time, but I just want to thank everyone for being here and for all of your questions, for making this such a great conversation. And thank you so much, Mr. Howard, for all that you've shared with us and for graciously answering questions and dedicating your time as well. I know I really enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as everyone else.
Shout out to Kent in the chat there. That's awesome to hear.
It was a direct message, but when you came to campus 4 years ago.
Sorry, I don't know how this thing works.
Oh, no. I just didn't want to take up the whole chat. But when you came to campus 4 years ago, I went to lunch with you, a large group of students, and you inspired me to think about a career in games. And then now I'm a product manager at Epic Games. So I've made it from William & Mary student in the entrepreneurship program to gaming, and it's awesome. But you played a part in it, so thank you.
Awesome to hear.
Awesome. Yeah, Kent is a entrepreneurship alum or entrepreneurship center alum, and he is now one of the heads of houses for our engagement model. All the students are sorted into houses, kind of like Harry Potter. So speaking of that, for the members of the EC who are here tonight, I put the check-in link in the chat. So be sure to check in so you can get your house points as well as your points for our liftoff game. And then if you're not a member, I've also put the new member form in the chat so you can sign up, or you can reach out to me if you have any questions about membership or getting involved. I'm also going to stick around for a few minutes if anyone has questions about tonight or about getting involved with the center. But I just want to thank you again, Mr. Howard, for joining us. And to everyone else, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And we hope to see you all tomorrow for Rocket Pitch at 2 p.m. The focus is sustainable products. So we hope to see you there. Bye, everyone.
Thanks for having me, everybody. Look forward to seeing you on campus in the future. So good luck.
Absolutely. Thank you.